Hi, how we doing? So this is the second part of the B1 Battle Droid and Speeder build series, and this video is going to explore the painting process. So we're going to take it from the primer up. The model's currently primed and waiting to be painted. There's a couple of wee bits I'm just finishing off in terms of join marks, you know, where the two pieces of plastic have to join together, and we're left with this seam that runs down here. So I've been filling that up with some putty and sanding it down, and then going back across it with the primer just to make sure we've got a nice smooth surface. Ideally we want this to look as professional as possible. So I always find that in order for a good model, or for a model to be a good model, it has to start off with the build itself, and to make sure that we've not got any what do you call them, flashing. That's the flashing for the process of when the two moulds come together. And we get the plastic coming out on the seams, so that's called flashing, as we spoke about in the previous video. So we need to make sure we've removed all that. The join marks and stuff like that, they should be seamless, and that's really the start, basis, the foundation of a good model. Once you've got the undercoat done, everything should look nice and smooth, with no runs in the paint, no bits of hair stuck to it, dust or anything like that. So we'll move on. So here we have it, the speeder all primed. Is it perfect? No, there's a couple wee bits probably here and there that could be a bit better, but all in all, I'm actually really happy with how it's turned out. Quite a straightforward model to build. Went together pretty well. I've certainly put together worse models. I've done better. I've put together better models, but all in all, given the fact that it's what, 20-odd-year-old, it's a decent kit. It says skill level 2. I don't know what their benchmark is for skill levels on the box. You see, it's skill level 2, age 10 plus. Yeah, I'm sure you could probably put that together if you're 10-year-old. There's not a huge amount of parts to it. It's a fairly decent size. But hey, I think it's turned out okay. Will it be good enough for a display? A display piece? I think so. Aye. So the next stage, as I said, was just to start painting it. So I've got my primer on the model. The primer I used was this stuff. It's not particularly expensive, but it's actually pretty decent. It dries really, really nice. It leaves a lovely matte base for the paint to adhere to. It's got a lovely, lovely smooth feel to it. It sands back really well and fills pretty well, but doesn't miss out the details. It's got really good self-leveling properties. So actually, once it's laid down onto the model, actually, first time I ever used it was something else. I can't remember what it was, but first time I ever used it, I was like, I don't know, I might have ruined this, because it looked pretty thick. And I'd give the can a good shake and stuff. It's just a rattle can with a wee ball in it. I gave it a good mix. But in actual fact, once it had dried, it levelled off lovely and really thinned out. So yeah, there's not much else you can say really about primer paint. It's not really anything to get too excited about. So base colour for, and this will be for both models. I say both models, I know it's all the part of one model, but I've got it sort of split into two parts. We've got the wee Battle Droid guy. I've just finished adding a couple of bits of primer that I'd sanded back on, a few spots here and there that I tidied up on. So I'll just leave him sitting there out the road and out. We'll paint him shortly. So we'll start off with the speeder, and the base colour that we're going to use is this ILM Death Star Surface Grey. So this is actually screen matched to the panels used in A New Hope that were made up of the Death Star surface in the final battle scene. Anyway, I get quite excited about stuff like that, but most people probably don't. But yeah, I'm a geek, so I'm okay with that. Anyway, the reason although you can see with the reference artwork here, it's the rust colour, the 1975 rust. We will come to that. But you'll see that there's chipping and scores and stuff, paint worn away. The reason the Death Star tiles were this particular colour, because this was the primer that they used. They basically sprayed a primer over the top of the plastic model that they'd built, and that was it. They were like, no, we'll use that colour. They'd added a few colours here and there extra, but that's a discussion for another time. So I'm going to use this. This is also the base colour for Slave 1 as well. Boba Fett ship. I done a 160 scale Slave 1. It was the first video I ever put up on YouTube, actually. You can have a look at it. It's just a short minute and a half or something of pictures of the final model. I'm hoping to get my hands on a bigger scale Slave 1 in the not too distant future. And we can go through that as a build as well. But anyway, back to this. So this is going to be used as a base colour, and then we're going to add some of this stuff here. Liquid latex. This is stuff for watercolour painting, but it's liquid latex, exact same stuff. The only difference between this and the stuff you'll buy from Vallejo, etc., is that it doesn't have an additive as a colourant. This is just basically just liquid latex. So we use that as a masking fluid to mask off this, to create the chips and the scores, and then we layer the next paint, which will be the rust, obviously, over the top of that. So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to start laying down the base colour and the Death Star Surface Grey, and then we'll come back and we'll have a wee chat more about that once that's done. Right, so as I'm going along making this video, documenting the painting process, this model, I've decided I'm going to split it in two. We'll keep the Battle Droid as a separate video, and we'll make the speeder this video. Primarily because it's just going to run on and run on and run on. And I want to try and keep these videos under half an hour. I know there's maybe a couple that have been about that mark, or maybe just over. I don't actually know. I've not really looked too much at the time, but I'm trying to keep it under that kind of thing, because people get bored of just watching, somebody building a model, painting it. But equally so, there is merit in sharing how we do it. Okay, so I'm trying to keep it as entertaining as possible without being bloody tedious, unless of course you just want something to set you off to sleep. Anyway, so the next part you're going to see is just a really short time lapse of me just laying down a bit of colour. It'll be the Death Star Surface Grey. Once you've seen that, then we'll then move on to start applying the latex fluid. Alrighty, see you in a bit. Right, so here we are. I've not went too nuts with the ILM Death Star Grey. Fairly even coat across this part. I'm not going to get too concerned with here. This is going to be a darker grey in this section here. Under here, there's no really naturally going to be much in the way of chipping, because it's the underside here. If you think about where things naturally where things naturally would get chipped, it would be sort of on leading surfaces. So like here, all these parts here. There would be some edges and things in here that would get a bit of a battering. We have to now start to get into the way of thinking of weathering and, what causes weathering. So, the first layer that we're doing is the chipping. So what sort of things cause chipping? So it might be flying stones, it might just be part of a blast mark. You know, you've got some paint stripped away, revealing what's underneath, but then on top of that you might end up applying some sort of carbon scoring or blast marks or whatever. So just some considerations. What I need to stress right now at this point is, and I think I might have mentioned this before, ILM don't think made any physical models for these. I think these potentially were completely 3D rendered, or you know, certainly computer generated models rather than actual physical styrene model that they would, you know, they would make previous, or a resin model that would make previously for the original films. I'm not going with any particular weathering pattern. Actually, I think if you look at that model there, and I think that one there, when you look at the weathering patterns, it's basically the same, exact same model. If that was ILM had built 5 separate models, each weathering pattern would be different. There'd be some slight variations. So that's where the digital thing falls down. I like the old physical models, but then again, you know, they're moving backwards towards that with the newer stuff that they're making with Star Wars just now. But anyway, so the next part, as I say, we're going to go into that, and I'll maybe do a short time lapse of me applying some of the weathering, some of the chipping effect, and then we'll look at that further down the line as well for the big reveal. Love that part. And you remove all the masking fluid from something you've already been working on. It just looks brilliant. Anyway, something else I was going to say there, or something else. Oh, that's what it was. So I'm not actually going to follow any particular... I mean, I'm going to use this artwork for reference. It's probably... I looked up artwork online, sort of reference material, and this was the picture that primarily came up most, so I've got it here in the box. That'll do the job. I'm not going to follow any particular weathering pattern. I'm just going to... It's not going to be like a Canon screen accurate sort of, you know, thing. I'm just going to do, based on what I see there, but my own sort of take on it. Okay, moving on. I know I initially said I was going to do a time-lapse thing. I actually don't think I will. I think we'll do it in real time so that we can actually talk about the application of the liquid latex. Actually, before we go, excuse me, before we go into applying it, I'll talk about how I apply it. So this was these wee silicon tip brushes. They can be used for sculpting and all sorts of stuff. It was John Simmons and his YouTube channel when he was doing this effect that had spoke about it, and I thought, hey, that's a bloody brilliant idea. Previously I used brushes and I get clogged up really easily, and just toothpicks and stuff, but there's a nice softness to this that can allows you to manipulate and not damage the paintwork, but also manipulate the latex. And they're just perfect for it. So I bought a pack of these. So thanks, John, once again for, you know, just about everything I do here. So I'm going to try and do roughly what we've got here, just at that corner. Can you see that? Okay, yeah, so you can. But as I say, I'm not going to make it absolutely accurate. I'll just have a crack at it and see how it turns out. We'll just use it as a bit of guidance. The good thing about a model in this scale is that the latex and the smaller scale ones can be a bit haphazard. And by that I mean it's a bit harder to control in a smaller model, and you don't quite get the same detailed effect, whereas in a bigger model, then absolutely you can. Let's just do that as a sort of streak. There we go. And we'll just build this up, create nice interesting shapes and patterns. Look at what's on the artwork, your reference artwork that's available to you, or reference material in the world round about us. So you can look at what so you can look at different chipping effects on fences, or you know, old pictures of old cars and things like that, or tanks. You can look at how people, you know, sort of military models and things like that. If you look at photographs of old military vehicles, you can see good examples of paint chipping, or industrial vehicles are another one actually. The whole point of this is just to give it that aged look. And I've said it in videos before, George Lucas's whole thing when he made the Star Wars trilogy, party's aesthetic, if you like, was that lived-in universe, and that was part of what drew people to Star Wars, I think. It didn't look like most other sci-fi films of its sort of generation. You know, a lot of these films had quite a clean, crisp look, and so when George Lucas introduced the world to this, but more of a lived-in environment, I think people could relate to it a wee bit more. Well, as much as you can relate to, you know, wizards jumping out with swords made out of light and laser and whatnot, and blasters, and I don't know. I know it's just a make-believe thing, but it's great entertainment. And it's just a nice place to get lost in. And I like creating, and again, I think I've said this before, I like creating things from that people can have and enjoy. Just display pieces, or, you know, things that bring back memories from when they were a kid. You know, the X-Wings, seeing the X-Wings fly over, bits of the Death Star, all that kind of stuff. Slave One, of course. Boba Fett's ship was a firm favourite with most people, I think, and remains so to this day. With a lot of people. Anyway, so sorry, I think I just completely made that disappear there. I was too busy concentrating. Edges are always a good place to start. You know, leading edges, parts protruding out, things like that. Things that are most likely to get scuffed first. And then, of course, if things are flying past, like if that was flying through the trees or whatever, you know, they might be going across the treetops, and then, you know, things would score along the side. So, you know, you think about what patterns are being made, what's actually creating the chips, how it's created, and then you can sort of try and replicate those patterns, and it just makes things a bit more realistic. So I'm going to crack on with this. I'm not going to bore the backside off everybody watching me applying latex to a model. So I'll crack on with this part, and then we'll have a wee look at the next layer of paint after that. Cheers now. Right, so I'm just about to lay down the 1975 Rust. Airbrush is primed, ready to go. I have managed to get the latex down. You'll not be able to see it just now because it dries clear. It's meant to be for watercolour painting and stuff, but as I said earlier, it's the same stuff, just doesn't have the dye in it. So the next time I get stuff, I'll make sure it's got the dye in it, make it a bit easier to see. But even then, it doesn't make that much of a difference once you've painted over it, because, well, if you've painted over it and you don't see it. Anyway, you can still pick up where you've put it down by the raised parts, the raised areas, if you look across the finished paint. And you can just scrape it away there with your nail or whatever. But you'll see that process just shortly. And boom. There we go. The rust is done. A couple of wee bits here and there that'll touch up and tidy up. Excuse me. As the build goes on. But really what I wanted to show you right now is this. This is the best part. Well, certainly one of the best parts of modelling. When you're doing a weathering effect, like chipping, it's just so satisfying to just start rubbing the paintwork and just take that latex, start taking that latex off to reveal all the chips and the scores and the scratches that you sat and put on bit by bit, one by one, your wee silicone brush and your wee pot of latex. And this is when the character starts to come into the model. I'm not going to sit and go through it all, but you get the gist. I mean, already we're starting to get a weathered look here. As I said to you before, you know, we started working on leading edges. Bits that were going to have wear and tear on them. And this is what we get. There's some scores in there. It's going to take a wee bit of time to go through the whole thing. I'm quite sure you're not going to want to sit here and watch me take off bits of latex, but you get the gist already. Now, that's very stark, the difference between the grey and the rust there. So what we do is we take off, or I say what I do, and that might be different for other people, but what I tend to do is I take off the latex, and then we reveal the two tones, the chipped paint, or the chipped rust paint, and then the undercoat, the grey on the underside. In some models that might be a metallic colour, but metallic's only really a thing. And a lot of the original models, there were some metallics on some of the episode 1 models, but on this one certainly doesn't look like there's any, based on the reference material that I've got. And then the next stage from that is then we start adding the weathering effects, so the blast marks and the dirt and the grime and that sort of stuff, and that's all done with the flooding washes, the misting effects, and then actually specific targeted areas where you're doing like blast marks or, you know, sort of carbon scoring and all that kind of jazz. Anyway, so excuse me. Oh, pardon me, my God. So that's really where we're at just now. I'm going to continue on with removing all the chipping that I've done, and I'll be on to the next stage. Hope you like it so far. Right, so the chipping's all done. Just change the light in there a wee bit. This part here is they actually finished being painted. I'm doing this and this parts in rust based on the artwork. This part here is obviously a dark grey colour. Most likely I think I'll probably use SP Dark Lark, or Lark Dark, whatever you call it. But the rust areas are the main bit I'm going to concentrate on first and foremost, and they are pretty much done. I'm quite pleased with how that's turned out. Love that big score up the side there. Plenty nice chips and dings. Don't know if you can see that there. Yep, so some nice wear and tear on the front here as well. This leading edge here took a bit of bashing. I should have probably looked at this area here as well, but I can always sponge in something at a later point. I'll check it over, make sure I've caught all the pieces before we start the weathering process, but that'll be, well, I'll not be tonight. I've done enough for tonight. Yeah, I'm quite pleased with that. I like the patterns. Not too much, not too little. And that'll be knocked back and misted and stuff as the build goes on, as the weathering layers start to build up. Yeah. Weathering next. Right, here we are. Okay, so the grey part has now been done. We've managed to use the scalpel to score back some of the paint because some of the latex that I had laid down had actually came off just with the hand. I've been trying not to handle the model too much and use this wee base, but well, as you can see, it spins around, which is fine at some points, but it's a bit too free-flowing for my liking at some points, and I need to obviously handle the model into some of the nooks and crannies. So some of the latex came off. It's not a big deal. I've used a knife. I've actually scraped back to some parts of the styrene. Some of the latex stayed on, which was grand, but I've actually scraped back to some of the styrene, which is a technique ILM used. When you see a lot of the chipping on some of the X-Wings, there's some black scoring. That's actually back to, it was a black resin or a black plastic that they used. And that's, you know, that scoring. So I'm not too annoyed about having to score back to the plastic, because actually it's in keeping with ILM's techniques. I'm quite pleased with how this part's turned out. There's a couple of wee areas here and there that maybe need to tidy up by a brush. There's a wee bit in here actually where we can still see some of the rust, but that's an easy fix. I've managed to weather up the top here as well. I've got some wash going in here, not your traditional panel wash obviously, but more of the airbrush applied wash, so thin the paint down a bit more than it was, or than it would normally be, that you would use for series blast marks and things, or even just general painting. And we're getting that flowing in there and just creating a random pattern of grime and dirt and oil and grease and, you know, all the usual stuff. A couple of things still to mask off: the handlebars, or all the grips for the handlebars, and these parts here for the guns. From this point in here to here, it matches in with this. So that's something that we'll pick up tomorrow. We've got some nice weather. I'm quite pleased with some of the weather I've got in here. A couple of little blast marks and stuff. Didn't want to go too nuts, because I think it's one of these things, weather, I get carried away with it. I really do. I get so excited. I really enjoy it, and I just go absolutely mental. And before you know it, actually, it takes the look off the model. It goes too far, and I don't want to do that. It's a really nice kit. I think I'm really happy with how it's turned out in terms of the build. And so I don't want to just overdo it. It's so easy to do that. I've done it with so many models in the past, and it just looks horrendous. Oh, one other thing I managed to achieve tonight, I've managed to break that off. That was nice of me. I'll just get a bit of super glue and I'll just tack that back on. That's not a big major issue. I'm not going to die in a ditch about that. It looks bloody annoying when it happens, but hey ho. So that's where we're at, as they say. I think I need a bit more weathering on the guns actually. But again, you know, less is more sometimes, and I wanted to start off light. But I'll go into it a wee bit heavier as needed. Anyway, right. It's in fact it's not 11:30, it's 20 to 12. It's time to go in and go to bed. See you in a bit. Right, so very last section of the video, I'm going to call this complete, for the speeder anyway, certainly. So a couple of things that I've managed to get tidied up. As you can see, obviously we've done the grey bit, done all the misting. Handlebars, I was going to do them black, because looking at the reference photographs, actually, as I look at them more, I think it's probably grey rather than black. Just in keeping in with the rest of the model. I mean, I might be wrong, but hey, listen, it looks okay. The barrels of the guns have been misted back with I'll tell you right now, it was, no, that wasn't that one, it was, yep, SP lettering grey, so it was the SP Lark Dark, and then misted over with the lettering grey just to kind of fade that a wee bit and just lighten that up. Obviously the blast marks, as I said previously, were the Lark Dark. In here, these sections here were also Lark Dark, but then misted back with a variety of different colours, including foundation, grime. I think there might be a bit of concrete in there, and there was definitely some 1975 mud. But then again, that was done across the rest of the model as well. 1975 rust for the primary colour. On the backs of the engines and on the fronts here, as well as other misting coats that landed on top of it afterwards, there was also the weathered black. Was it? Yep, 1975 weathered black. I wanted to differentiate the engines a wee bit just from the rest of the blast marks, just to make it look a bit more like an exhaust sort of root residue rather than, I mean, it's not entirely accurate to the model, I don't think. In fact, to be honest, I can't, for the reference photograph, you can't really see much of this misting that I've done here, this feathered sort of section. But to me, you know, I was going with my vision of it rather than absolutely 100% screen accurate. So this is what we've come up with. I'm quite pleased with it. I've also managed to darken down these bits again for the reference material. It looks to be in keeping with the rest of these colours here as well. So overall, quite pleased. Actually, just the underside here. Oh, sorry. Excuse me. Just on the underside here, I don't know how well you can see that in the camera, but that's had some very thin down washes of Lark Dark, misting of Lark Dark as well, and then a very lightly misted over the top of that a bit of weathered black as well, just to, you know, simulate grime and dirt and that sort of stuff. The underside also had the misting coats that the rest of the speeder had as well prior to that. So there we go. And of course the little armatures here, or whatever they're called, they were done using I think it was SP lettering grey as well. Just they certainly appear a bit lighter in the reference material to the rest of it, so again it just stands out and gives it a bit of contrast to the model. Just obviously scuds, scuffs and scores on the top, a bit of weathering at the blasters, and that's that. Very pleased with this. Very, very pleased with it, in fact. Right, well, on with the B1 Battle Droid next. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to leave a comment, please feel free. If you've got any comments, questions, criticisms, anything at all, any questions you want answered, ask away. Give the video a wee like if you can, if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing to the channel. I'm hoping to do more models as I go along, primarily Star Wars, but I will be covering other stuff eventually as well. But my main focus at the minute is on Star Wars. I've still got a couple of, I've got 4 Games Workshop models to finish up for someone that's paying me to do them. I should probably get my finger out and actually finish them off as well. Those are ones I can do in the house right enough. But in order to operate the airbrush and stuff, I need to be in the garage. I don't think my wife would be too pleased if I was airbrushing models in the living room. Anyway, enough rambling. As I say, hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks very much for watching. Take care. The next video you'll see will be covered the Battle Droid. So I don't think that'll be as long. I'm saying that. It might be. I don't know. Anyway, so next video will be the Battle Droid. And thanks again for watching. Cheers and out. Bye.